In this video, we will consider the options available when using an object to invoke another object with an interface. We will see that we can make the call, indicating at runtime the transition with which the called object will be opened and closed, its behavior depending on the call type, and the position on the screen that the called object will take. This is done through CallOptions. Let's review the syntax of invocations to work with elements and panels, which are the main objects with interfaces. To a work with list, to the detail and view mode, the primary key is sent to it in a parameter, to the detail and edit mode. In the invocation, we need to indicate if it's an insertion, update, or deletion. If the operation we want to perform is update or delete, we send the parameters corresponding to the primary key. The insert operation is special. We may not send any parameters, and in this case, the user will enter all the details in the invoked detail edit screen. But if we need to send a parameter to start the values when invoking the detail edit screen, we must do it through a variable of the associated business component data type. They are in/out. They're out so as to keep the primary key if it's auto number, for example. Remember that we can start any value, not only those corresponding to the primary key. Then, the business component will return loaded with the entered data. The invocation to a panel is similar to any other invocation. However, in addition to invoking the object, we can do it by indicating at runtime the exit and entry transition for the user interface of the screen called, the behavior depending on the type of call, and the position or target that the called object will take in the screen device area. This is why the desired call options must be run before making the call, with the syntax we've seen before. For example, there's a predefined domain called effect. It's enumerated, and as we can see, it offers the same transition possibilities as the enter effect and exit effect properties of the form classes in the theme that we use to define the enter and exit effects of an object layout at design time. In this way, before invoking an object, we can define its enter effect and exit effect call options. We've implemented it within the dashboard to invoke the sessions list. We've specified enter effect equals pushup among its call options. At runtime, we can see it working. In our application, we've also implemented the call option target. Here we have the example, where we want the panel showing the tweets to open in the area to the right. It only makes sense when using navigation styles with multiple targets for the same screen. We can also change the call's behavior, depending on the type of call, which will be related to the invocation stack, and to how the called object works. The first two types presented define what will happen with the invocation stack when the call is made. This will be related to the object it returns to when the call is finished or when selecting back. The last two types will define if the object called will work as a pop-up or a callout window. In addition, the pop-up window will be a modal or not, depending on whether parameters are returned. For the callout option, it won't be a modal. Tapping outside the callout area will enable the caller. It's precisely in the case of pop-up or callout that the other call option called target size is displayed to indicate the size of the pop-up or callout screen. As for push and replace types, push is the default. Suppose that an object X called an object A. If now from A, in an event, we call an object B with the push call type, the object called is placed on top of the stack. Its screen is opened over the caller screen, taking exactly the same place. And to continue running, the caller waits for the execution of the called object B to end. In this way, it's deleted from the stack. If, however, from object A, we call object B with the replace call type, the called object will also be opened taking exactly the same screen area as the caller, but it will replace the caller object in the stack. Therefore, when its execution ends, the execution of event A will not continue running. Instead, it'll return to the previous object in the stack. In this case, it's object X. As for the pop-out and callout screens, let's see the pop-up type. If the target size is not changed, it'll take the same screen as the caller. Otherwise, it'll take the area that we've indicated. If the invocation parameters include one of output type, the dialog will be a modal. That is to say, the caller will wait for the return from the execution of B to continue. If none of the parameters is of output type, the dialog will be non-modal. Let's see an example. When the user clicks to view the list of restaurants, we want to give him or her the option through the Map button to view them on a map. But before showing them, we want to remind him that restaurants have different discounts for the event's participants. Also, we want to let him display only those restaurants that have committed to serve lunch within the time frame assigned by the user. So, for example, if we have 1 hour, we want the map to display the restaurants that have committed to serve lunch in a certain time frame. Note that this screen corresponds to a restaurant's map panel that will be very similar to the restaurant's work with list. The main difference between one panel and another will not only be due to the fact that in this case the discount attribute is being added, but also to the SD maps control type in this grid. Also, the data loaded is being filtered according to this condition. That is to say, according to the time available for lunch. This time is received in a variable in the parm rule that calls this panel. It's not the work with list directly. Instead, it's this intermediate panel, restaurant filter, which is opening as a separate screen over the previous one. Looking at the invocation, over the map button, we open the associated event, and we see that the restaurant filter panel is being called, sending it two parameters, timing and OK. Let's open this panel. We see it has the timing variable, a radio button that offers the values. And if we open the event associated with the OK button, we can see that it sets the OK variable to true. Otherwise, pressing the event associated with the cancel button sets it to false. We can see in OK it returns to the caller, that is to say, the work with list. And here, a time value has been selected, so the restaurant's maps is the panel invoked by sending it this and the timing variable. However, if we think about it, the restaurant filter screen corresponds more closely to a pop-up screen of modal type. That is to say, the execution of what comes after the invocation will have to wait for it to be completed before continuing. To achieve this, we only have to precede the invocation with the definition of CallOptions type. The type of call is defined with the call type predefined domain. As we can see, it's enumerated and has the four options we've seen before. So we choose call type dot popup. If we also want this panel to open and take a reduced screen area small, in relation to the list calling it, we will also have to define the target size. Again, we use CallOptions, period, target size. For this option, there's also a domain, call target size, that takes these three values. We will define call, target size, period, small. We press F5 to try it. And here we see it. We can also set the size of the screen called, in dips or percentages relative to the parent. This is done through the properties target height and target width. Now we should mention that the target call options used with a split screen, it doesn't make sense in phones, to indicate the possible targets in which the called screen is to be loaded. This cannot be used with callout or pop-up screens. You can read more about this in our wiki. And with that, we've finished studying the most important aspects of setting the behavior of online mobile applications. Next, we suggest that you continue studying totally or partially offline applications.